So, guys, lesson 4 is the most important to my mind because it concerns motion design in general, not only VideoHive and other stocks. It's quite easy to study and tutorials, but even experienced designers and artists sometimes have troubles in creating something new, not to mention beginners. When I just started, the level of design was quite different, but when I looked at works created by more experienced colleagues, I already puzzled over that question. How do they do it? Now, the industry did not just step ahead, it's riding a high speed elevator. Just look at how many tutorials and courses there are around, how far the designer's toolkit expanded. There are so many communities developing by leaps and bounds. Many beginners dream of becoming a master of design and making history, but as they start working, they waste time in self torture trying to make something but with no success. How to start creating a cool design, how to become a successful designer not only on VideoHive but also outside the stocks. We'll try to find answers to these questions in this lesson. First of all, it won't work fast. Even knowing all the theory from the internet, you'll hardly be able to create anything remarkable. Anyway, it's the practice that makes perfect, and this practice should concern not only mastering tools and creating everydays, but also watching and studying the modern design, articles and blogs on design. But the main thing to my mind is looking at the great design by masters of the profession. You should teach your mind to the beauty, to get used to the wonderful visual solutions on color, form and animation. If every day you drip a drop of milk into a glass with dirty water, sometime later milk will displace all the water. So do you, cutting off all the extra activities, making room for aesthetics in your mind, creating a quite different world and atmosphere around yourself. Studying and analyzing the works of more skillful colleagues, sooner or later you'll make your mind more delicate. You learn how to distinguish brilliant ideas from visual mistakes and use all your experience in your works, no matter they are sold on stocks. Your portfolio will smell of aesthetics, beauty, attention to details and accuracy. I started pretty late and I couldn't do that, but still I overcame the social and genetic limits of my skills. If you look at my first works, you might have your eyes bleed. And if you have an art background and young passion, I just envy you guys. Where all those design monsters live, all of you know, of course. For a long time, we have three main places: Behance, Pinterest, and Dribbble. They are platforms for designers, but I will also add Instagram and will speak about it too, because I think soon it will be the main search platform for designers for some reason. Well, let's begin with Behance. If you haven't registered on this platform yet, I advise you to do it because Behance is not just an exhibition for designers, photographers, architects, and artists from the whole world. It's a really employment history for any designer that shows his growth. And here you can settle something like a head office where you'll keep all your secret collections with works for study. If you are here for a long time already and sometimes create projects for designers, those of other spheres such as web design, UI, UX, your page on Behance will give a good traffic to your VideoHive page with potential buyers. I upload almost all of my projects here. So I recommend you to monitor Behance every day for at least an hour and have a look at the most popular and the best works featured by the platform itself and marked with a ribbon in your profile categories, and also in the categories you are interested in and are going to make projects on. If you have never been here or spent too little time on Behance, give it some more time at the start. Make several collections where you'll put the works you like. Build collections on the subjects you're going to study, for example, color, text, animation, elements, mockups, fonts, broadcast design, UI, UX design, web design, graphic design, illustrations, and so on. So all the topics that will help you learn more about your profession, to analyze the picture almost splitting it into pixels. Every day add something new. Look through the works you added before. In this way you program yourself and get used to the new modern art. I urge you to take it at least as art and nothing else. If you especially like some work, take time to find the author's page and look it through to find something more useful. Probably the author specializes in this area and has many similar works. But don't make it a formal standard. I mean, if you give some time to this process, don't do it roughly and promptly. It's better to spend an hour looking through one page than stuff the collection with each and every picture and then forget leaving it just lying there. It won't work. If you add some work into your collection, it's attracted your attention. Try to analyze what it is, what makes it so awesome, what visual devices the author uses and why. If you need, put them down on paper. This way you'll learn to find important little details and shades and take them into account in your work. How this happens and what we can learn. Let's have a look at the examples from my collection. We'll try to analyze several works to find out why the designers made those solutions, to remember them and to be armed to the teeth with knowledge on design and our visual perception. You'll be surprised how interesting and informative it can be. So the first example. Look carefully at this project. Here, first of all, I like the work with text, and even if we remove all the illustrations, we'll find something to see. First, the big, broad Helvetica looks massive because of the smaller or pretty small text nearby. In this way, the author puts accents on the more important words using the sharp contrast of size and turns the text into an additional form that has not only informative but also a visual impact. Look at this background. It's not just a gradient, but colors close in tone, flowing from the dark to the lighter shades and vice versa. Most people associate it with the variety of sunrises and sunsets. Each of us watched sunrises and sunsets many times. They can be different, both fiery red and cool blue, but any sunrise and sunset are associated with something beautiful or romantic. By the way, look here, the author tried to make the text with a simple stroke and it looks cool, to my mind. Somehow I've never thought about doing it, but we tried to use it in our latest works and we like it, and it does look great. In this poster, there is a sharp frame division into two colors. Looks like a ray of light thrown through an open door from one room to another. The poster with the glass, look and think about how it's made and how awesome it looks. If in solids you just make holes and drop a shadow, it won't look cool. Look what a soft shadow. For example, if you turn out the light at home in the evening and move your palm closer and away from the surface, you'll see how it works. The farther is the palm from the surface, the softer is its shadow and border. The closer it's to the surface, the harder the shadow and the sharper is its border. Look, what a shadow the author made. It's soft and he pushed the space apart with this soft shadow. The distance between the solids is marked by the device and the long glass seems to be confirming that the space is stretched. Very often you can see dozens of visual mistakes on VideoHive based on such simple things as the shadow. It means that the author is careless and he drops effects without any idea. I saw several examples when objects move in the space and cast a shadow. But a shadow can be seen only on some surface, and if we don't have a surface, the shadow can be cast. It has no place to lie on. Another undesirable way of use is a shadow from a white text to a bright surface. As a matter of fact, any effect or element in your work must have a reason. 4 or 5 years ago, I visited a conference with an art director, Pavel Chistikov. He worked as a leading designer at Artemy Lebedev Studio and an art director at Russia TV channel. I don't remember much from his speech, but there's one phrase I remembered for a lifetime. If you add something, some element or effect, you should explain why you do it, what the sense is, what it gives, what it is for. If you can't explain it or it's stuck with no reason, it won't work. So a professional must be able to explain what and why he did. And I almost forgot to say, the noise laid on top also adds some charm, some retro style. It's highlighted with color correction. The picture looks tanned and it's cool. Here's another shadow. Look how it pushes the space apart and how it lies. It looks like everything is set out and shot, not only because of the texture of the elements but also thanks to the shadow. Its fall, density, and form point to a light source somewhere in the top of left corner. Now let's look at a bad example. Recently we created video mockups with iMags for web and I had looked for screenshots for the preview. I found screenshots with very cool and effective illustrations. I wanted to use them and wrote to the author to get his agreement. After I got it and downloaded the screens, I found out that in some sections, some plates had an unfinished shadow. It's short and too dense at the edge of the plate. Besides, the dark color spreads dirt. Usually the shadow is painted in cold tones to make it look rich. The design is cool, the illustrations are great, but some elements are unfinished and it can scare the buyer. That's why I urge you to pay special attention to this. The shadow can also look great when it separates the white from the white. I can't find the reference, but I'll show you how we use it in our project. The sections are marked with big white numbers on a white background. They don't distract the viewer from the main information on the screen, but still you can see them and they seem to be extruded from a form surface in exterior lighting as if they are made of plasterboard. The next project, ADASA Cultural Branding. Here I like the way the author uses the variety of one geometric figure, rhombus. Look how much you can do using only a rhombus. Changing its form, size, color, blending models, subtracting, cutting, and so on. Such examples will teach you to be innovative with a minimum of information. What can do if all you've got is a rhombus, square, or a circle? It turns out anything at all. You just didn't know it, and then you came across a designer who widened your scope of knowledge and how you can work with simple forms. One more wonderful example of building design around a rhombus is the Olympic Games in Sochi. I'm sure you'll easily find a bunch of works on Behance. Be sure to look at now how much you can make around a simple geometric figure. Let's go ahead. I like many things about this work, but to save time, I'll stop only at the thing useful as a visual device for VideoHive. Look at this yellow plate for text. It's clear about the shadow, we've discussed it. A simple photo overlay to an ordinary yellow solid makes it more interesting and rich. On VideoHive, designers often use plates. You can't just make a plate for a text and it will look nice. You can drop a photo over the composition and reduce opacity with the soft light. And here you are, quite a different look. You can learn a lot from the top web designers' works. Note how they present their work on Behance, how they work with text blocks describing them, how much care and love they give to it, and how carefully everything's done. Once we speak about plates, let's discuss how they are used. First of all, plates are not used on a smooth, clear background. In this case, they have no sense. The aim of the plates is not only to separate text from the background, but also to make it readable. For example, if there is a picture or some elements under the text block, the plate is necessary. The color of the plate shouldn't make a hole in the picture, and in general, the minor objects shouldn't draw the viewer's attention. Another example that helped me not long ago. It's a presentation of Sberbank made by my friend Andrei Krasavin. Look at the plates for the text, simple half-transparent solids with a thin bevel along the outline. Making those mockups, I spent the last hour experimenting with plates for text, picking colors and gradients, this and that and the other. Sometimes it made holes in the picture because it looked unnatural. It's really difficult to compose a plate into three-dimensional space to make it react to the splashes of light changing in the iMac model. I wanted to make similar matte plates. In 3D, you can't use such pre-render because a buyer may want to remove it or turn it off or change the size, and it won't work with pre-rendering. Everything you see is saved in your memory, and I just remembered that I couldn't do it in that way. Just blur adjustment, black it out with curves or desaturate it to separate from the background, and that's all. It will look well, the text will be seen, and all the changes under the plate will be seen. This is the way you study. You have got an idea to create something, you see the examples on VideoHive how it can be made, and you just find your way and try to express your vision in your work. And after you've seen enough works by more experienced and taught guys, your toolkit and range of visual solutions will be much broader. You'll stop thinking of some things. You've just got an idea and a bunch of plans on how to do it. But to fix it as a skill, I still recommend you to make every days. If you just try to make a text and set a shadow carefully, try different settings for the effect. It will be highly useful. Later, if you fix this habit, you'll start to run more complex tools like Particular or some more complex plugins. It's a great work. Have a look and subscribe to Andrei on Behance. He is a great designer. He was one of the main specialists in N3 Studio. We often see each other on CG events. And if you think it's easy to make such things, no, it isn't. He says you need to work hard to create a really great project. Let's analyze some more examples to see how designers' work affects the viewer. Have a look at this work. If you want to add majesty and make the object big, add something small. Look how the small text refines the portrait and turns an ordinary photo into a huge billboard. The font, words, and letters arrangement adds some technology style, something like cyberpunk. If you scroll below, you'll see the author supports his idea with additional small elements. They look like ordinary photos but with noises and flashes. It imitates shooting with a film camera and at the same time a text in a technology style. An attractive and interesting symbiosis, cyberpunk and something like half retro. I'd like to show a work by a designer who used such devices in his project, but they look quite different. On some photos you see the same small text serving to refine the image. This means your site is arrested not only by a good photo but also by additional details in the text. Although these are works of different authors on quite different topics, and I doubt they spied each other because this effect is pretty commonly used. I just show you examples which ways and what areas you can develop your concepts. If you look closer how the text blocks look, you can easily read the author's idea to make a form from the block, and this creates an additional visual image in the viewer's mind. And that's enough for Behance. We actually can stick here for a long time, but to save time, we'll go to Pinterest because it's also full of many interesting things. Pinterest is arranged in a different way. Its structure looks like a high preview windows, the so-called pins, which you can take to create your collections. Here they are called boards. The greatest thing about Pinterest is its convenience. The preview window is not separate project screen, but the preview itself, so that we can see what's inside in the preview without opening the project. It saves a lot of time. Here I also have rich collections. Some are regularly filled up, some are already out of date, but I can still find something interesting and useful for self-development and training my taste buds. You can see by my latest series that I was interested in 3D still lifes. I like this subject very much, but I can't understand yet how to use it on stocks and in templates. Maybe just like footages with a little slow motion. But it must be a pack of at least 10 things and you need to sell them on a new non-exclusive account to have a permission to suggest them to several platforms like Adobe Stock, Vimeo and Shutterstock. By the way, I'd like to show you several references which I used in my real projects. Maybe you'll see very little in common and you'll be right because I took just the way of the author's usage and visualized them as I see it. Before this project I traveled to Amsterdam and visited a museum of modern art and a museum of photography. And there I saw a white wall with a beautiful smooth description made in a Swiss style and filled with a light from the window. There were only text blocks. It was so simple but beautiful and balanced at the same time, and I decided to make something like that on VideoHive, minimalist and clear. The idea was to make a presentation, and this was a little stress test. Here you couldn't just stuff the shot with a bunch of effects armed with tutorials. Creating something interesting with just a few elements is a different story. Jonathan Ive, the Apple chief designer, said that the cool thing must be simple and easy in usage. And I decided no matter what, I will do a big project in a minimalist style. And I did it, but it took 2 weeks instead of the usual 4 or 5 days. Besides, 70% of the time was spent searching for visual ideas, how the project should look. So the task was to make a corporate pack in a minimalist style. The target audience is the medium business making something cozy and pleasant, such as interior design studios, handmade, and so on. Those producing nice light impressions like I felt in the Amsterdam Museum of Photography. The first thing I did was studying the subject, running through the websites of the businesses I was interested in. Then I looked for the offers made for them by designers on ThemeForest and noticed the key things that should exactly have been made. While searching, I saw exactly the way the information is presented for such businesses, how and why. Almost all of them give information by sections, and the reader doesn't have to read everything. He can run through the headlines and catch what kind of company it is, what it makes, and what benefits it suggests. And if it's interesting, he can go deep into details. So I decided to create single bumpers defining each section with a heading and some form, and between these bumpers I would put a more detailed information with examples shown. So I defined the task and started to look for the way to make it, to understand what examples I can use and which things I certainly shouldn't do. First I found a mess of references that addled my brains, and finally I deleted all of them except the two where I clearly saw the idea. So the first reference is this. Here I like the way the square frame was used. I saw there the basis for the whole visual story. My task was to find something like that to develop the whole concept. Here the author used the square as the main form. I also decided to try a square. I didn't take the frame itself because it's a hackneyed idea already. Besides, I wanted to make square and rectangle placeholders. The idea was to make the design simpler and a frame could create a jumble in the shot. First, I spinned a solid square, experimented with different colors of the font and the square, sitting all day long and pushing squares about the AE viewing window. I collected the project, but I wasn't satisfied. The next day I simply deleted it. Just typed the heading text on the white background and put a square photo nearby. I didn't like it again. It was too simple. No one would need it just because it was inspired by minimalism in Amsterdam. As a result, I was upset and had to delete everything. On the third day, I was cool as a cucumber. Just gave up all the thoughts of failure, tried to leave the depressing dialogue in my head and just started thinking, how the hell to make this square with this text on this background attractive? First, I made a slight gradient on the background, so slight it was hardly seen, from a cool white to a bit gray white. A pure white color is not recommended in design, I always knew it, but when you want to make something great and immediately wait for the result, instead of careful work, your head is full of mess which muffles everything. I stopped bothering and focused on the work and its progress. I decided to add some volume and drop a shadow. First it was bullshit, of course, then a couple of minutes work and it totally changed. Then I remembered that I had already made a white text with a shadow on a white background, but I didn't want to fill up the background. And I decided to highlight the headlines with big, thick icons which could stand for some section. But then I gave up that idea because the presentation can be used for any kind of business and I don't know if the icon will fit it. Besides, I couldn't put it the way it would look great. So I tell you all my ideas, and foolish as well, for you to see that good ideas can be found among the bad ones as well. As a result, I just left the huge numbers that look like forms sewn out from the plasterboard. The background remains minimalist. It has a form and it points at the ordinary number of the section. So I went far from the reference, although I started from the idea of the square. I mean, the idea worked, but it's much different from the reference. I didn't took the visual concept, but the idea of a project based on geometric form. The second reference. I also took the idea of huge numbers to my bumpers, but I made them look quite different. Besides, here I took the idea to enumerate slides in the main parts, but I wanted them to look more aesthetic, big but not so bulky, and some other details. In this project, I liked how the text looks. On this website, I like the way the placeholders are filled. I often watch web designs, sometimes adding similar clear minimalist things. They are simple and attract the eye with their aesthetics. I tried to pick up photos with similar thematic and atmosphere. Then everything was quite easy. I made different galleries to put the photos into some space and fill the background from beginning to end. The idea to make such roundabout just came to my mind and I immediately made it in just 5 minutes. The next gallery is just a different version of the first one, and the others were also made in the same way, in the same style, but with a different frame division into the main and secondary roles and different compositions. Usually I don't think much, mainly try different variants in AE right away, moving the elements, changing the colors and so on. Like maybe this way or maybe that way. Up here it goes okay, I leave it, duplicate the composition and try it in a different way. It worked, good. It didn't work, I tried different arrangement. I believe that this very process is the liveliest and the most interesting part of the job, when you're like a kid doing crafts and watching how to make them better. But I'd like to note again that while working I have the same troubles as the rest of the designers. But the difference between a beginner and more experienced author is that a beginner starts to worry and a skillful designer takes it as a part of the process. All these failures when the ideas don't come. For example, the idea with this roundabout galleries came to me long ago. Like you're just going somewhere, see a Ferris wheel and catch the idea, but you don't run around with it, but put it off and then it just pops up. In difficult moments like this, somebody struggles with the problem, somebody's worried, someone looks for a clue. As for me, sometimes I also struggle, but most often it doesn't work and I just wait. I need a change of pace for a couple of days, turn to my housework, and in this way I kill two birds with one stone, although it can be difficult or maybe different in your case. Okay, one more example. Here I like the way these pills look. To me they look like pills. I like they are so smooth, having such a nice and plain form with a beautiful gradient. They even look like curling stones. I want to touch them and in any case they provoke tactile sensations. When you watch a reference, it's important both to analyze your feelings and to think of associations the pictures evokes, what it looks like, what you can compare it with. It's especially important for those working in a team. If you are an art director, you should explain what you want to make in the simplest and most detailed way. This is how you can apply such forms. A big corporate pack with a pile of infographics. The idea was to make the main elements volume and it should have been the main feature. But our pills look a little bit different. They are not round but with a bevel in a circle, because it's very easy to make in AE. You just make a circle with a slight gradient, duplicate it, turn 180 degrees, scale a bit smaller and get a pill. The same thing was done with hexagodrones. They look quite interesting. You already have this convex form as the main idea of the project you can rely on. I already didn't perform it myself, I just supervised the job and collected the final file, and the project was made by my team, Lena and Losha. We'll speak about them later, their story is very interesting. Let's go to Dribbble. I come here very seldom. There is no special reason, it's no worse than Behance or Pinterest. Maybe just spend more time there and that's enough for me. Here I don't have collections and mostly watch my follow feed. I'm subscribed to the designers good at working with color, form and accurate in their work. I am eager to learn accuracy and cleanliness, first of all, for my team. They are all beginners. I seldom create something myself, mostly supervising and teaching people, and I already need more time for design itself. Note that clean work looks different for a beginner or an experienced author. A beginner's clean work looks a real garbage for a skillful designer or an art director. As I have no collections here which I could tell you about, let's find something interesting, and if I've got some ideas on how to apply it, I'll tell you. And to talk about shadows, see how a website is presented. VideoHive has a whole section with websites presentations, so it's vital for us. A soft, hardly seen shadow, look how the upper part of the shot is lit. I've never done this, but I'm going to try and adopt it as it looks great. I wouldn't use such an angle in video presentation because it's static frame and it's alone. And if you design a presentation, you'll make several parts, and either all of them will be placed at that angle or everything will be smooth. But these are just my ideas you need to try. Here you see a cool work with text, stroke without a fill. We saw such variant at the beginning of the video. It turns out to be not so rare. The main thing is not the device itself, but how you manage to apply it. That's the ideal. When you bring something of your own, your personal experience relying the devices you have. That is the novelty of a visual image, when you take a well-known device and show it in a different way. You couldn't think of anything like that. You've just been experimenting with a pretty Hawkeye topic and all of a sudden discovered a new area of design. But to get it done, you need a huge baggage of knowledge, of images watched and realized. The same thing about trends. At the end of 2018, coral was announced the color of 2019, but it was so loud that right away the color turned default. If you want to use it, make interesting mixes, otherwise the picture will look like a girl who came to a party where everyone wears the same dresses. This is great. I like the work with text. White text on a light background. Maybe it's not so readable, but it looks cool. It will be read pretty well on a big screen. A light and blurred layer, we've already seen such examples, and I used such tables for my white mockups. It's an example of how one device is used in different projects, and everywhere it looks different and interesting, and every work is unique. A few words about the designers I follow on Dribbble. The first is a Czech designer Mike. His last name is not written. Each work is a real piece of art. Look how he works with color, what clean, accurate and bright works, how much care for the detail. Take time to study them, analyze what attracts you in these works. If it's cleanliness, then how it looks for you. Try to look carefully at every shot, how he puts accents, how he holds your attention, how he works with text. Vasyan Katro, he has cool experiments with gradients. I subscribe to people not so much to find a reference as to develop taste, to refine it. The more you watch, the better you analyze design works. An illustrator, Valid Beno. Excellent work with color, very atmospheric illustration. I like this style. Besides, the author has a clear style. The next is Daniel Lepik. He is a master of 3D art, a great designer. Look carefully at his works with cleanliness, fantastic cleanliness. JQ Studio, a bright poster art. Look through their works. Note how different can be works made in one direction. I mean vertical posters. There are hundreds of them and each one is designed in a different way. Very often designers lack variety and their works looks the same, no new ideas. It's a bright case how courage helps overcome dead ends. I follow a lot of designers on Behance. I could tell much about everyone and this would be super helpful, but it needs a special course because of too much information. I'd like to finish this lesson with Instagram. Guys, look how many savings I have. At the moment, Instagram is as useful for me and full of helpful images as Behance, and the reason is surfing social media. It's my favorite network as well as for the most modern people on the planet. Designers are visual. Almost all of
the guys from Behance and Dribbble use Insta as the main gallery for their works because its audience is much bigger and doesn't consist of designers only. Like in a museum, a random person can stop for a moment at your work and become your regular viewer. Instagram is perfect for that. Here are the most famous modern digital artists and designers: Bipul Krap, Maxim Svetskov, Loop, many beginners from the new generation of designers with their everyday and still lives, a bunch of publics on render, AE features, UI, UX, and so on. A very convenient and fast way to get information besides it's mobile. Okay, dear friends, that's all on Visual Solutions. I tried to develop the theme to be clear and open, and I hope it was helpful. In the following part, we'll sort out the main project categories, what they look like, how they can be created, made, and so on.